Well, this morning, folks, this is a very special podcast, an empowerment podcast I'm doing with Paisley Madison, because this week we've had World Mental Health and World Mental Health Day. And Paisley, with Meeting for Minds and 20 Piece and her business, has been so inspirational and effective. So let's get into it right now. Paisley, thanks so much for agreeing to do this second podcast. We did one a week or two ago talking about you in general and your business and passion, but today we're going to drill down. So welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me in. I'm glad to be here.
No, good, mate. What have you been up to this morning? Have you been meditating or doing something very healthy or what?
Of course I have. I love it. I live it. This morning I was running a meditation group with the team over in Sydney.
Wow, fantastic. Brilliant. Well, let's get into that, Paisley. So in a nutshell, tell us a little bit about your business and what drives you and what your passion is, particularly around health, mental health, human empowerment.
Yeah. So I run a personal business, which is all around meditation, journaling, and self-development. And so my journey to self-development and the tools that I focus on is meditation, that ability to turn inward and starting to become our own explorers of self. From there, we sort of spark this sort of curiosity, which I believe helps us find what we need in life and points us in the right direction. So I do one-to-one work with clients. I also run group meditation. I do journaling courses. So a combination of those tools in different ways, depending on what somebody needs.
Fantastic. And let me just ask that question. What motivates Paisley Madison? What drives you to do this? Why aren't you working in a bank or, doing something else?
Well, to put it simply, once you've had a taste of the good life, you actually can't go back. You can't, you can't pretend like you don't know what's good and what feels good. And so in my own meditation practice, when I've sort of tapped in and I felt a sense of euphoria or sense of freedom, and, even in our own lives, when we see others sort of looking at living a way that sort of feels liberated, you can't deny what you know, you can't unsee it. And so it continues to drive me forward in my own sort of evolution. And what I believe the purpose of life is that sense of expansion, that forever expanding.
Fantastic. I mean, you know how much I love alliteration. You just talked expansion and evolution and empowerment. It's beautiful. So good. I'm looking right now at our World Mental Health Day poster where we had a collaboration between Pod Squad, our swimming group at Cottesloe Beach, Meeting for Minds and 20 Piece, and the words connect to self, connect to nature, connect to community. Talk about, well, you did the poster. So talk about what that all means to you and why it's important essentially to everyone in terms of every human being in terms of their existence. Connect to self, connect to nature, connect to community. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, there are vital ingredients that we need in order to have physical well-being and mental well-being. And we know that they have a symbiotic relationship. You can't really separate it. And in my own personal practice, what I've come to realize is that, we are kind of limited on time. And so there's all these different little parts that we need in order to live fulfilled life and have quality of life. And what if we can actually combine lots of those parts together? So I'm meditating with friends out in nature, having conscious conversations. And so this is how it sort of evolved. It was actually, what is it that we do and, that works? And how can we sort of inspire others to get on board with this? And that was sort of, I guess, what sparked the event for Monday, World Mental Health Day.
And I'm looking at the post. Can we talk about, as you say, physical, mental, emotional, energetic, or some would call it spiritual, the energy, the positive energy that we create through that connection on the coast. And again, I'm looking at my seas here because there's something magical about the coastline, whether it be, as you guys, sitting on the sand, eyes closed, going inward and creating a sense of calmness on the coast, and also there's a sense of collaboration and community there.
That's right.
And besides, as I say to people in our pod squad, the last 300 meters is the most enjoyable because that's when your dopamine and your serotonin. So there's the internal chemistry, the internal neurotransmitters. So there's, those people who are the scientists wonder, how do we measure it? What's actually going on at the physical level we can measure. But of course, we know something else is going on at the energetic level. Our energy changes. We get energy in some way from that coastline and ocean too, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, it's undoubt, like you can't doubt the fact that nature has this sort of healing abilities, this sort of way to bring us back into our natural alignment. And I mean, nature is in perfect form. It's us as humans who tend to manipulate nature, but nature as it is, it's perfect. And so I think it's when we're in nature and we're connecting to that, it sort of helps us come into that natural balance. And like you said, it's not dissimilar to meditation. You feel a bit fidgety, maybe you're in your head, and then slowly towards the end of that meditation practice, well, hopefully you sort of find that alignment, and then there's that natural lifting that happens. And the more that we do this, the more we build that momentum, in our lives towards the things that we want to be doing.
Absolutely. I what I've got here, Paisley, is I'm going to do a screenshot of this. This is my mind map. At the center of the circle is the words conscious connection. Conscious connection. And and we'll go around some of these things. A conscious connection, let's say in the first instance, with community. What does that do for mental health from your studies and your observation when people have a conscious connection with community?
Well, as human beings, we know that from the moment that we are born, we have a recognition that our survival is linked to our ability to receive love. And so it's such a foundational instinct that we need connectedness. We need to be connected to others. And it feels good to be connected to others. Not only that, you can do it alone, but if you've ever tried to do it alone in life, it's tough. And so it's much better to do it together. And so when we are in communities, there's additional energy, there's more broader perspectives, you can learn more, there's diversity, it's just, again, it comes back to that expansion, there's more people working together. I think when we look at community, that's the fastest route to growth, sense of connection, understanding. It just makes sense.
Absolutely. Now, one of the other C's I've got there is control, mind control or emotional control. And even this morning in the coffee conversation, which again, we talk about conscious connection to constructive conversation. And we put the coffee in there, and that what we're seeing is the power of conscious conversation or good conversation or positive conversation or kind of any conversation, but ideally I call it conscious constructive conversation, because in general, what we find in our pod squad group is very few people are in there whinging and talking about how bad the economy is or how bad the government is or how bad, so there's almost no negative talk. It's literally about how good the day is. And even today, I'm talking to Brendan, who just gave me his book. He's a super yacht captain, and he actually in his chapter talks about he comes from Rockingham originally, and because through the America's Cup met people into yachting, but gee, that looks good. Joins the Navy, and again, here is a chance connection. A chance connection where he's working in the hotel, but the ecosystem in 1987 in Perth was yachting. And he's gone, man, this looks what the hell are these guys on about? So these chance connections that happen. I mean, what is it? What is that? The chaos theory, which is the atoms just bouncing into one another, and through chance things happening, which you're reminding me of other things. We met a guy in New York once who his father was a famous record producer, and he said, never take the subway, always walk, because you never know who you're going to bump into in the street through chance connection. And like consciously walking the street of New York instead of getting the subway, because Bob, how are you? What are you up to? Gee, well, hey, we should get together and talk about this. Well, and I mean, even Brendan today talking about a chance connection with another fellow that led on. I mean, here we are. A chance.
Yeah,
how did we get together? Jane, who knew what Jane. Where did it start? It would start with Andy is swimming in. Look at this. This is how crazy life is, right? Andy is swimming in to the beach. A guy looks like he's in trouble in the ocean. Andy says to the guy, "Are you okay?" The guy goes, "No, I'm not." He brings him in and saves him. We take photos of it, and Andy's daughter rings a friend at Channel 9 and it ends up as a story on the TV. Jane Wishaw, who we know, the journalist, says, gee, these guys have got a good story. She starts coming down and taking photos of Pod Squad. She introduces us to you guys, and off the bat. So like these chance connections that happen in community. And even this week, and again, a podcast I just did this week, my mate Jerry's daughter, Alla Therese, is a musician. And we start talking. As it works out, her future husband is the son of an old mate of mine. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on. These chance connections that only happen, though, when you are out and about. And of course, Martin Seligman, the founder of the School of Positive Psychology out of the University of Arizona, in his book, Authentic Happiness, his research shows the number one predictor of positive mental health is number of social connections. That is, in any one day, how many people did you talk to? How many people did you get face to face with? And so the inverse of that is, if I stay home in my room all day on my own, watching TV or Netflix or just laying in bed and looking at myself, the chances of my depression going up or my state of mental well-being going down is exponential. So it's all chance connection. So consciously connecting with community. Now, the other word I wrote as you were talking is challenge, because if you're looking about mind control, some of the bullshit that goes on in our heads, when you finally have that conversation with someone else and the person goes, really? You think that? Why do you even let me? And one way or another, they consciously and constructively challenge, basically saying, mate, that is a load of bullshit that you're thinking. You know, that line of thinking is only going to take you down a negative path. So what are your thoughts to those comments I've just made?
Yeah, I mean, you know, these conscious connections that we're talking about, you know, it's very similar to when somebody says, you know, well, I was just feeling so good within myself and I walked out the house and then that's when I bumped in and I met my soulmate or I met my partner and I wasn't looking for anything, you know, and I think about those experiences and we hear them quite frequently. It does happen. And the sort of partnerships or friendships that we make, these are kind of soul connections. They feel so nourishing and fulfilling. And when we think about it like that, it's like when we finally connect to ourselves, it allows us to be able to connect to others. It's like we're removing the resistance and being open to new opportunities. And so, you know, when you're not distracted with your phone or you don't have these barriers and you allow yourself to be open, there's new possibilities. And so it's that receptivity that we get. And I think when we think about physical movement, swimming in the water, connecting with nature, it's about coming back into our bodies and feeling nature, feeling our muscles through movement. These are ways of connecting to ourselves. When we meditate and you're journaling and you're listening to yourself, you're witnessing, you're having a connection to yourself. And so I'm never surprised when people tell me about these sort of miraculous connections or events that happen after they've had a moment of connection to self.
Beautiful, beautiful. Two things that go on as you're talking about chance connection. Literally at the coffee shop this morning, Georgia, who is one of the girls that swims with us, she's also rowed for Australia, and at Harvard, her and her boyfriend partner, Luke, came and had coffee again by chance. She said, oh, well, hi, guys. We just had a tea bag this morning. That is, you know, a dip in the ocean. Yeah. We didn't swim. And we got talking. I said, how did you guys meet? And Luke said, well, actually, we met at Leonard's Chicken when we were 13. I said, what? What do you mean you were both buying chicken at Leonard's Chicken? He goes, no, I was out the back making the kebabs with chicken and she was the checkout chick. I said, what the hell? What was that? Were you constantly looking out going, that checkout chick's all right. And not, by the way, what were you doing working at 13? Aren't you supposed to be 15? And she said, well, by chance, I'm there buying chicken and the guy running the shop said, do you want a job? We'll talk about chance connection, you know? So it ends up, she gets the job there. And then they said, we didn't see each other for 3 or 4 years after that. Then we saw each other again. And hallelujah, you know, as you said, soul connection, which reminds me of the conversation I was having with Jerry's daughter, Alla Therese, the musician, because she had a record launch on Sunday night. I'd been to one of her shows before and went, mate, she is good, good. Not only that, because I've said to her, I said, Ella, keep up the chat with the audience. Because when she's talking about, I wrote this song when I was feeling down, or I wrote this song, a bit like Adele or Peter, you wouldn't remember Peter Allen, but the chat with the audience, the vulnerability, the opening up factor. I said, Ella, the songs are great, but when you talk about the songs and reveal through vulnerability, it takes it. She said, does that work, does it? I'm just talking. I said, no, don't lose it. So in amongst it all, I said, okay, we got to get Ella on the stage, because our other talk about community and connection. Brad Mallon is an old mate of mine. Brad was a pool attendant at Challenge Stadium. That Challenge Stadium was my first client. I got them into goal setting and setting visions for themselves and their teams. Brad had set goals that he wanted to run his own business. He wanted to run his own promotions business. He wanted to run his own concert business. And here he is now, the biggest. In fact, he was just bought out by the biggest entertainment promotion company in the world. So he puts on all the big shows at Kings Park. He had Midnight Oil over here the other day. I said, okay, but they always need local warm-up acts, So we've got to get Ella on stage. So I ring Mark, my mate. He goes, send through the information. Mark Enright, who swims with us in the pod squad, part of the community. I give him Ella's details. I say to Brad at water polo on Tuesday night, has Mark given you Ella's details yet? He goes, no, I don't know anything about it. He said, send it to me. I send him to Brad. I ring Ella and say, I've sent it to Brad. Then I ring Mark after swimming yesterday. So Mark, just to let you know, I've told Brad so you guys can talk about Ella. Mark goes, mate, it's so political getting people on the warm-up stage. But we are about to set up a talent booking agency so that Ella would be so I ring Ella and I say, Ella, she's going, Leigh, thank you so much for this. You don't have to. I said, mate, if I can't do it myself and get on stage, at least I can help you get on stage, But in amongst it all, we start talking about, because one of her songs is called Confusion. It's a great song. And again, I'll put the link up. Confusion, there's another C, of course. I said, so what got you to write that song? And what are you doing to manage and control your own confusion? She says, my fiance and I are into Vedic meditation. I go, what the hell's Vedic meditation? I mean, I know guided meditation, Vedic meditation. It's different than Buddhist, where they're talking about kindness. It's really about mantras. And so I look it up. But she says, my fiance is about to go to India for 3 months and learn to be a Vedic teacher. I said, what the hell? So we got to do a podcast. Because so all of a sudden and then at one point she starts saying, you've got to do, because I happened to say the Pieces movie that we'd seen on Monday night about the use of creativity as a vehicle to heal, which is on the back of the brochure there. And I looked that up yesterday as well, how creativity is such a powerful vehicle to heal and get in touch with your inner world and really, it's, through the right brain and the subconscious. And she says, yes, you've got to find ways to make your soul sing. And I went, oh my God, that's what a powerful. I said, okay, we've got to do a podcast on this. But here you are, the whole concept. I mean, I almost would never use the word soul. But as soon as you say, I want my soul to sing, it inspired me so much. I actually did a recording on that yesterday around energy. But so let's talk about this, the use of creativity, because I know you're working with people all the time, but the use of creativity and what you do and what you recommend to people about getting their soul to sing.
Again, I really think it's about getting ourselves primed, like getting into a position where we can allow that creative energy to flow. As soon as we're trying to be creative, we just create resistance. And then it's like, we can't get that inspiration that we're looking for. And so, again, when we connect to ourselves and we find how we can just sort of melt in and allow some sort of presence. And I think a big way that I do that is, again, by sort of getting out of my head and connecting more to my senses. So engaging in the smell, engaging in the sight, what is it that I'm seeing, and really being present in the room here now. And sometimes people go, well, I get bored. And I get excited when I hear people talk about boredom, because I know from boredom births such amazing creative projects. It's like when we allow ourselves to move through that to see what becomes possible. Some of the best poetry that I've written in my journals is just from being in the room and observing a small detail about something and describing it. And then as I've written that down and I've kind of taken a step back to look at it, it's actually quite profound, because the macro is the micro, and we know that everything is connected, and we see our expression in all sorts of versions of reality. We're expressing everything we see because we're the ones who have the lens that we're looking through.
Beautiful.
So, a big part of my creativity, again, is really sparked through community. So when I'm feeling down, or I feel a bit blocked, or I just feel like I'm, not feeling myself, I don't feel like I'm at my best or I'm doing my best work, I can connect back in with people. And just through those conversations of talking and getting new ideas, or just hearing myself say something out loud and someone sort of giving me a new iteration or a pivot or a perspective on that, I can start to co-create. And I actually think co-creating is the best and most exciting, moment. Yesterday I sat with a client and I got giddy because we were just, oh my God, bouncing ideas and having synergy and being on the same wavelength. And the ideas started to spark from there. And it's so nice to be able to share that moment.
Absolutely.
So again, I think when you get back into community, if you feel like you're lacking fun or inspiration, step out into the world. It's all there, and just start to be in the world. It's almost like that kind of chicken, that sort of chicken and egg experience. Do I have to try to find something to get started? Actually, I just go out in the world and just play it simple. Be simple. Look at the simple things around you. Be with someone. Really just be with someone. Let them talk and listen before actually having to say something or anticipate saying something. Just see what actually might develop and unfold.
Beautiful. I mean, that note I've made in front of me about consciously, as you said, connecting to the present moment. This is a critical part of the whole, I suppose Vedic area meditation is we can either be present to the present, or, the point is, where is my mind? Talk about mind control. Where's my mind? Where's your mind? Where's anyone's mind? It can only either be in the present with you right now, or jumping ahead of what needs to happen tomorrow in 1 hour's time, in 5 minutes' time. What am I going to say when she finishes? In other words, as soon as I'm asking myself, what am I going to say when she finishes, I'm not present.
That's
and
right.
At the same time, if I'm talking about what happened an hour ago, yesterday, last week, 10 years ago, now I'm contaminating the present with the past. And of course, this is such a critical piece of teaching that essentially, I'm sure whether it be in India and a whole range of places, you teach the kids about be present to where your mind is at. And of course, we say, how do you get present again? Is the breath. It's just the most profound piece of information. How do you get present? You do the most simple, but not, it's more than simple, because without it, you're dead. Breath, you need breath. Like, try it for 3 minutes and don't. But when you become present to the breath, so that to me was a profound piece of information, because I've used it in besides myself and others in business, but in sport. My National League water polo team, where I co-coaching, the coach does all the technical stuff, but in and around team energy, team dynamic, mind management. Boys, it's 1 minute to go, and where the scores are level, and it's the grand final. Now what happens? Well, first we do is be present, because we don't want our mind rushing forward as to we've either won or we've lost. And I don't want us hanging into what happened last quarter. If only we had scored that goal, we would have been 2 goals up, and therefore we wouldn't be in this situation. We're poisoning the moment. So it's just become present, and we become present to what are we about to do? We're about to go into attack, and we're about to score a goal. That's it. So literally George Ford, who's now played at, I think, 3 Olympics. He certainly played at 2, possibly 3. He's saying, Leigh, literally that was the situation. It was scores were level, and 1 minute to go. And I breathe, and he just, like he said, my and this is it, my level of congruency and clarity, there was no doubt what was about to happen. Well, that's a very powerful state to come in. But we taught those kids from about age 14 about that stuff. Well, it becomes very powerful, not just obviously in water polo, but in any other part of life. But the problem is, most people don't even understand what do we mean by being present, because the mind, because as you know, the Buddhists, they talk about the monkey mind. It's running around like a bunch of monkeys rather than bring it down, which is what you're doing with your 20 minutes of peace, is conscious calmness, and even to the point we talk about celebrating calmness. What's your response when I use the term celebrating calmness?
I think of the word, and I mean, when I'm working with clients, we talk a lot about sobriety, and that's not just, we hear that a lot with alcohol, right? Being super sober, but actually having that sense of sobriety in our emotions, our sense of sobriety through life. And so often when people actually get to calm, they are afraid of it. They're afraid of feeling calm because they think it's numb, or it's, it's nothing, or they get a bit nervous because actually they're feeling content. And it's foreign if you're jacked up on adrenaline all the time and you'll go.
Wow.
It's actually, they start getting almost afraid of it. Like, I feel scared. Oh God, I don't really know how I feel. And so then in that moment of, sobriety or being content, then the mind will start to jump back in. And so for a little while, actually, as you start to come into calm, it is good to celebrate it, to use the mind to say, actually, this is normal. This is okay. Actually, what I'm feeling is safety. I can actually have this experience. And like you said, when you start to slow down, you start to be able to savor the moments. And anyone who practices any form of meditation or mindfulness, you get more time. You just know you get more time in your day because you've got so much more time to respond as opposed to being so reactive. So for me, celebrating calm is those moments where I just realize there's nothing to do but just be. And like in that being, it's like, to me, is pure liberation. I feel free. There's nothing to do. I can actually just be.
Yeah.
And, working with clients, when I've had a really big client list, like 5 clients a day, 5 days a week, people say, how did you do that without burning out? But I'm not anticipating. I'm not trying to get ahead. I'm not trying to change someone. I'm not trying to force them or get them on board with my thinking. When I come into that place of allowing, actually, there's not that much to do, but just be in that response and to just facilitate that conscious interaction, that conscious sense of connection. So it actually doesn't take that much energy when we're in that space of allowing. It's the resistance that's so draining. And even that external resistance we see out there is usually a mirror of some sort of internal resistance that we have. And you and I both know with the mind work, that internal resistance is usually some kind of contradiction I've got in my mind that I'm not letting go of.
Yeah. As you say, that level of the number of things come to mind. One, we see people, we call it adrenaline addiction. They're addicted to being busy. Like if you hang out with journalists for too long, they're deadline. And in fact, they start to identify that I'm so busy. I got so much on. I've been to business functions and I'm busy. I'm so flat out, man. I haven't got time to scratch myself. It's going, mate, you're wearing that as some kind of medal. And of course we know, what does that actually mean in terms of health? So, 3 years later, the guy's had a heart attack or given himself cancer or whatever, because of the internal state, and is not even conscious of what that internal state's actually doing to his health, his or her health. That hang on, do you actually think your body's designed to live in that state 24/7? And of course, it reminds me of in my master's thesis days when we first came across type A and type B personality.
Yes,
where,
right.
People with type A walk fast, talk fast, try and get more and more done in less and less time. Why is it they're 4 times more likely to have a heart attack? 400% more likely to have a heart attack than type B. They get more done and then they die. Because cholesterol, blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The internal mechanism is not designed to be that way. So it's and the word content, as you say, people being afraid of content. Like you and I, it was an interesting interaction, talk about chance interaction we had at the end of Monday, and that lady bumped in. What do you guys do? I want to swim with you. She began to talk about what was her basal level of anxiety. Yeah. Certainly she wasn't coming from calmness. And then we talked about meditation. I just wanted to put to her meditate. I've tried meditation, but it just doesn't work for me. Meditation just doesn't work for me. I don't like it. I got to do something else than meditation. It's like, really? Isn't it funny? Because we say often the reason you're upset is not the reason you're upset. You know, I'm upset over the paperclip spilling, or I'm upset over that car in front of me pulling in front of me. But in fact, that is not why you're upset. It's all the other crap that you've got stored up inside you, and that just happens to push the button for that woman. Meditation doesn't work for me. It's the very thing she actually needs.
Yeah.
You know, her whole neurophysiology has been trained over the last 20, 30, 40 years to be busy. That's just the way I am.
Yeah.
No, that's the way you've trained yourself to be.
But
well, so what are your thoughts in reaction to that when someone says to you, meditation doesn't work for me?
We sort of, I tend to think of it like a trance. You know, the personality gets us into a trance.
Yes.
You know, and if you've ever been in that space, and I know I've been in that space where I think I've had a million projects and I'm saying yes to more, and I'm go, and I don't have time to sleep, or so I think I believe, and I'm in a trance, you know. And so, you know, mindfulness or having a community is where you actually get the wake-up call, people who say, whoa. And the power of community, of conscious communities, we co-regulate, another great word. We
co-regulate. We got my list of C's are getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
I know, right?
Tell me about co-regulate. What do you mean by that?
Co-regulate each other. It's like, you know, for example, sometimes I come home and I would probably be described as an A-type personality. An A-type meaning I get, you know, I speed up the more stressed I become and more unhealthy I become, as opposed to some types tend to, you know, turn down and become very lethargic. I go the opposite. I get more hyperactive. And so when I come in like that, you know, my partner can co-regulate me. He can notice that. He can be solid in himself, breathe. And his calmness and his being content naturally starts to have an effect on my body, where my nervous system is being regulated. In the same way, when we sit at coffee together and we're all there, if somebody's, you know, you actually regulate them. And if somebody's even more, you know, lethargic, or they're coming in and they're feeling like that, you can co-regulate them up to a new pace as well. And so, you know, we're all in this sort of harmonic state where we're all kind of breathing together. So yeah, co-regulation, it becomes possible when we're around people who are healthy. And you'll know, because the person that does that for you, kind of just, it's just a relief to be with them. You're like, oh, that felt nice. That is like, you're like a holiday.
Yep. Interesting you should say that, because you used the word before, and we've used it, synergy, synchronized energy. You've just did the harmonics of the situation. And literally, Brenda and I were talking this morning, and I did a post on it yesterday because someone said BGE, bring good energy. Consciously bring good energy to a conversation or a relationship. And by chance, what sparked me, talk about spark, because again, I made the word spark. You said that before. I was on the phone talking to a woman who was interested in being a coach. And I just felt her energy was so low. The chance of her winning any business from anyone, I want to be a life coach. I want to help people. It's like, man, that is not the energy you're going to want to bring to the table or a conversation. Because again, in fact, we're literally having a meeting today, our lifter group. We're continuing on. Oh, you know them, Kath Sutherland. We're doing the session today, continuing with our brand energy conversation.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with that diagram. It's bloody good.
Yeah. So and as Kath said, you know, like attracts like. You know, positive energy attracts positive, but negative energy attracts negative energy. You know, it's like, so in Pod Squad, you know, I use the language, I've consciously used the language, an ecosystem of positivity. It's an ecosystem of positivity. Dr. Fred the Irishman, and I'm going to try and remember Freddie's surname because I'm getting so old, I keep forgetting things, but Freddie's such a fantastic guy. He got in fact, I put him in touch with Sadhguru's podcast because we were talking about similar things around thinking and meditation, or thinking and mind control, or thinking and optimizing life, and so on. Fred English, great guy, for Dr. Fred English, just had a baby with Mel. She's fantastic. But complete asides, I don't know why my brain says that. So Fred, as we were walking down the other morning, and this was at like 5 o'clock in the morning, because he parked roughly the same time as we start talking, said he has gone from listening to Sadhguru, to going to the Buddhist monastery thing, wherever the Buddhists are in Osborne Park. And he said the monks have just done a 3-month silent retreat. What the hell? And going even further, now you probably know all this stuff. I knew about the food, the bowl thing. They literally, as part of their whole existence, someone else feeds them, in the sense that I remember I didn't know this, but, as part of the Buddhism, everybody at some point has to do a week or a month or something, literally just with a bowl. So they start to realize, if others don't reach out to help me, I'm gone. In other words, we're so connected in terms of helping each other. So you have a visceral experience of the charity of others, but for the good of others, but for the graciousness of others, I'm gone. And at the end of the day, that's essentially the way it is. But I love that concept, talking about connection with community. I mean, there you are. So the monks literally live by example. Did you know all that stuff? Did you?
Not about the bowls, but I have heard lots of different versions of of some of the sort of sacrifice, I guess, that they do in some of the practices.
Yeah, amazing. Well, and again, coming back, let's just take back to that woman. Meditation doesn't work for me. What's going on in terms of her inner dialogue and her identity and so on? Put her in a week-long or even a day-long silent retreat.
That would probably be very cruel.
She's only left with her own thoughts.
Yeah.
Which, of course, it's like, well, now who's in control? And I suppose that's part of why people do those silent retreats. Okay, if I can't be yabbering on and yabbering my inner crap out, man, now I have to find ways to manage it. And of course, coming back to neuroscience, we know, like, the nervous system, like muscles, can be developed over time. You need to expose it. That's why we say everyday empowerment. Aristotle, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. What are the habits I'm doing on a daily basis to manage my anxiety, manage my calmness, and whatever? And she's just a great example of in terms of chance connection of the vast majority of the population who are completely asleep to the damaging or disempowering dialogue that they let go on. As people say, if a friend spoke to you the way you speak to yourself, you'd get rid of that friend. But the cruel things we say to ourselves, I mean, even my good friend Shane the other day was saying, he was carrying someone's child because he's just such a caring person. He was looking after someone's kid, and then he was introducing the kid by the wrong name. Let's say, this is Lance, and the mother eventually says, can I have my son back? His name's Mark. Shane said, literally, he's walking around the house that day, I go, you stupid, what the hell were you doing? Why do you hit it? Like he's bashing himself up. And of course, it's like, okay, it's the past. Bashing yourself up is not going to help. So that every day, as teachers and educators, as you say, if you are present to, first of all, the possibilities, but present to what's going on around you, and then, okay, now how do I manage myself in terms of control? Kindness is not a C, but it certainly is an important part of, if we're talking about world mental health, the kindness, not only that we show others, but the kindness that we show ourselves. What are your comments in and around that?
Yeah, I mean, let's say kindness. Let's swap it for care, just for the C.
I like it. Thank you. See, that's co-creation. You have added. That's good. Thank you.
There we go. Just keeping it on. Just keeping it on.
Great. Yeah, beautiful.
And World Mental Health Day was Monday, and when people tend to think of World Mental Health, they tend to think of mental illness, and where I guess it's maybe a bit of a shift, but we're thinking about the entire spectrum. And we know everything in life is on a spectrum. Our anger is on a spectrum, our intelligence is on a spectrum, and it's on a sliding scale, and it's moving all the time. And our mental health is the same, from ill health to well-being. And that's the sort of focus that we want to have. And I think what the world needs right now, and why it's getting bigger and bigger, and it won't stop building momentum, is this practice of meditation in whichever way that somebody chooses to connect with their form of meditation, because ultimately what you're doing is you're having an impact on yourself. And like you're recognizing, it's why I found the journaling so profound in my life, because it allows me to transcribe my thoughts and to actually witness the way that I'm talking to myself.
Yes.
And when I do that, I realize the impact that has. And that's the mind-body connection. When I think like this, oh God, I feel like that, and actually I'm having this impact on me. And not only that, then when I talk to others, I'm having an impact on them. And so it actually makes us responsible for others and the impact that we're having. I hear a lot in spiritual communities and, through lots of different techniques, well, how you feel is your responsibility and that's on you. And if I say something that upsets you, well, you're responsible for your feelings. And that's true, because it's in the circle of control. A couple of C's there, but it's within the circle of control. We can control our thoughts, our responses, what we choose to do. But we still have impact on each other. And that's where that care comes in, to actually recognize that how I treat myself impacts others and how I treat them has an impact on them. Absolutely. And when you realize that you have impact, then you realize that you actually matter. And if you matter, you're far less likely to take your life or to actually hurt another.
Absolutely.
So it's a big part of that, is that actually feeling that impact and allowing yourself to be affected. And if you look up that definition of allowing myself to be affected, again, it's receptivity. It's that allowing energy, which is the opposite of resistance, not allowing myself to be affected, not allowing, a refusal.
Beautiful, beautiful. There's a whole lot of stuff you've just said that push some triggers in me there. As you say, well, first of all, as you say, I've heard that said. Oh, you're letting that in. I've just said it, but you're allowing it in. Yeah, but it doesn't mean you need to be an arsehole.
That's right.
There's and again, I was Sadhguru. There's a quote literally came out a couple of days ago. He goes, I'm not dedicated to your comfort. I'm dedicated to you optimizing your life and your performance as a human being. So, so at times I will either challenge you or say things that will challenge your beliefs that might be locking you in to a situation. But as you say, the other point that it was triggered there, in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which, as you know, is a body of science going, okay, how do we study human excellence? How do we communicate with ourselves and others to influence and help ourselves and other humans optimize their potential? They say you can never not influence. As you say, you're always having impact. So I often say to people, even if there was a person in the corner sleeping on the floor in the middle of a seminar room, they're having an impact, they're having an influence. Because people, what the hell is going, what's he doing or she doing? So that's right. You cannot not influence. That's why I say to people, when we're in a board meeting, somebody starts looking at their phone. Well, they think, oh, I'm just looking at my phone. It's not affecting anyone else. No, it actually is, because now you're what's that's like, right. Of course, one, it means they're not present, and two, they're actually distracting. Or and then of course in meetings where all of a sudden two people are talking, whispering at the side. What's going on? Well, I'm just talking. No, you're actually impacting the whole group, let alone all the other things. So as you say, you cannot not influence. You're always having an impact, which comes back to the thing with bring good energy. Because what is the energy I'm bringing to the table, and be conscious of that. And now I was literally saying to someone, I was saying to my daughter this morning, often one of the problems I see coming back to social connection is when someone is severely depressed, in a lot of cases, their focus is on themselves in terms of poor me. This is all things that are going wrong in my life, me, my life, versus we see when someone finds a cause or a purpose bigger than themselves, like my son, for example, all of a sudden he's got a girlfriend who's pregnant, and then the baby comes and now he's got a 3-year-old kid. Well, I've seen my son grow, because also now it's not about him, it's about Miriam and Noah. And literally my daughter, that's what the point was. We just had another grandchild last week, and my daughter put up a beautiful picture. My daughter put up a beautiful video of Cash, the 18-month-old, playing with the 5-day-old. And Caitlin said at playgroup yesterday, they got him role playing, looking after a doll and being kind and being careful with something smaller than him. And then his other cousin Ryder was there, and they got Ryder mentoring and being kind and careful and looking after Cash. Well, Cash is literally at 18 months of age, come home and started being kinder and more careful and more compassionate. And Caitlin's gone, I've seen him grow up in like one day. All of a sudden the focus is on something other than himself.
Yeah. Something
else to be. And of course, we see this with older people and pets. You give them a dog or a cat, and all of a sudden they've got the focus is off themselves. Let's take it. Their energy is off themselves and is now about something either that they love more or more important than them. Talk about, I tell you what, we made that note yesterday of using creativity as a healing mechanism. But what we're talking about here is using caring for someone else or something else, some other living thing, because you can say, I'm caring for the wall and I want to make it. You can even do that, paint the wall. But at the same time, I'm not saying do a painting. I'm saying, even that focus on something other than myself. It's a magnificent. Just say we want to connect with self, but at the same time, care for other things, and even same. That's why act, belong, commit is such a great. Act, take action, get the body involved, the biomechanics involved. Belong to a group, belong to a community, and commit to doing something for someone or something bigger and other. Like Kate Cheney came down the beach the other day. 800 people, of which 99.9% of them had not been involved in politics at all, got involved in that grassroots movement to say something's got to change. Something's got to change from the present system. So it's a great series of thoughts here when we're talking about mental health, but we're talking about mental well-being, optimizing your mental well-being, optimizing your happiness, optimizing your contentment. That contentment is not a crime, as you say. Contentment is at the core, making your soul sing. So what have I said that's triggered you there, Paisley? Because I've been yabbering on there. What are some of the points that come out for you there as I'm talking?
When I'm hearing you talk, I hear this process of maturation, which is like that sense of maturity, and it's not about any particular age, but it's that awareness of when you actually recognize that, like you said, we have impact, but we also have choice, another good C word.
Choice is on there. That's good. Yes.
Yeah, I have the ability to choose, and choosing that responsibility is such a great way to be connected, because you've got a commitment. I matter because I have a direct impact. Therefore, I need to look after myself to look after this other human being. I want to do right for you. Therefore, I've got to do right for me. You cannot separate the two, the two experiences. Again, I'm seeing that it's about that willingness, that wanting to take responsibility, that is really that stepping forward aspect.
Beautiful.
And the other word that you mentioned there is change. Recognition, we can actually change. Yes. We can choose to change whenever we want, and whatever we need to change when we're ready.
Yes. And the ecosystem. What's coming to mind is I just discovered on the ABC there's a show called something like You Can Dance or something, and what they're doing is they're taking older people who they're well and truly over 60s. Well, you're laughing because I should be doing it, right? I know. And what they're doing is they're getting them. It's both sports science and neuroscience and creativity, dance creativity, and they're taking these people, and literally I've just started watching. I think it's a 2 or 3 part show. I put it up on my Facebook wall yesterday, but they're creating an ecosystem. These people are going to put on a show, which is beautiful, just like in the movie Pieces. There's a deadline on a such and such a date. There's going to be a show. In fact, there's 12 weeks. We're going to do two 2-hour sessions per week, so 4 hours a week times 12. and a show will be put on. Well, I mean, we talk about a process called perturbation, the process of lovingly putting people into an environment of pressure and taking them on a journey, and they evolve. And they evolve as individuals, they evolve as a group. And there's a transformation that goes on. Now, in this case, because it's physical activity, they're going to get fitter, stronger. So their balance is going to be better. Their thinking is going to change. Some of them, one of the women had dementia or whatever, you know, a declining disease. Now, that professor the other day talked about, first of all, we know now that we always thought that the nerves did not regenerate in the brain, but in fact, we know new neural pathways can develop and do develop with regular daily exposure. And we know, of course, the muscles, is that even those muscles that are muscular dystrophy, there's now medication that's going to actually will help the muscles regenerate. But we know in the normal person, you get them exercising, transformation occurs. So this is just a beautiful show. You know, I mean, the other beautiful show on the ABC was that one where they got the old people linking with the young kids in the play center.
I love that one.
You know,
great. Yeah,
you know, that's just so they talk about connecting with self, connecting with nature. What I wanted to touch on was the you can do it. Being in an environment where people go, you can do it. In other words, like even in my case with Julia Leigh, we're doing 4K tomorrow. Oh my God, 4K, Leigh, you can do it. Get on with it. Stop whinging. And now I'm doing regular. Now she's saying we're doing 6K this week. It's like, and then my brain, oh, what the hell? But it's like, shut up. The same being with, because you remember Jonathan Livingston Seagull, the guy that wrote that, and I've forgotten his name for the moment, but he said, argue for your limitations and sure enough, they're yours.
Yeah.
Argue for your limitations, sure enough, they're yours. Henry Ford, whether you think you can or can't, either way, you're right. You know, so that you can do it. You need to be in an environment where people say, you can do it.
Yeah,
it can be done. Shut up, get on with it. You know, your self-talk that, in fact, in one of the books I did years ago, which I told you about jokingly, the person said to me, Leigh, I found your book in the secondhand bookshop. It was $1. Which is very hilarious. Great. But we said excuses and comfort zones are the enemies of change. Excuses and comfort zones are the enemies of change, which is why, by the way, another C is coach, having a coach. You know, every high performer, mind, body, spirit, has a coach, has someone that says, you can do it. Hey, I'm going to challenge your thinking lovingly and compassionately. I'm going to challenge the bullshit because they're BS. In fact, often we go FA, false assumption gets you FA, false. But I wanted to touch on, Paisley, I was going somewhere with all of this. Your poetry. Let's go.
Wow, we really lived back to some poetry. I like it.
Yeah, I know, mate, because you've said it. Now I'm going to, if you have to go and can you reach out and find some, or it'll take you a minute to find some? I want you to choose one or two pieces of your poetry because I want the right brain, your creativity.
Okay.
Go find it.
Okay, give me one moment.
I will.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, just share with me. Oh, tell us about that. What's that book? It's a beautiful book.
I will often write in like lots of different journals, and I just write for the sake of it. Some of them I throw out because they're pages of anger that deserve to be, well, they've been read before, and let's just say that's not how you maintain a healthy relationship. Okay. So we throw those ones out, and some of the things that I write that I enjoy or that have had an impact on me, I write down. In the same way, if I see something in my life and it's had an impact, I might purchase that item or I might print off that photo. And so when I've had a thought of impact that's made me feel a kind of way, I write it into this book here. And so this is kind of like some of my more finer thoughts.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, you know what's going to happen? I want you to read a couple, and then you've got me thinking, I'm going to delve down into my with poetry. I haven't written any for a long, long time, but I'm going to share one or two bits with you as well, because as you say, something happens. You know, something happens when. Now, by the way, is it a different process when you're writing by hand versus via typewriter? That's a whole other story as well, isn't it? In terms of release.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think when you're, it just is. There's something different that happens when you start to write it down. There's some sort of transference that happens. I mean, when I have had this spark of inspiration, when a moment of inspiration has come to me, I'm like, I've got to write this down. Sometimes I've written it in my phone, but I can type really, really fast. So, I've been able to capture that. But there's something that's more emotive about being able to write with the hand. I think because it's more of an extension as opposed to some sort of disconnect. Yeah. So there's definitely something more powerful about writing that.
Because I'm just thinking in terms of the healing process, one thing is getting the idea out, which of course it's so important to get the idea out anyway, but there's something about by hand. Anyway, share with me one or two pieces you'd like to share.
Sure. So here's one that I wrote, and I called it Dead Alive, which is the contrast of life. And I wrote this when I was in Costa Rica, and it was after the passing of my brother, who actually passed via suicide after his own mental health and physical degenerative sort of struggles. So here it is. Birth me in infinity, see me dead alive. You will never grieve me, never in your life. See me as perfection, and know this as your truth. For as long as we are unified, I am always one with you.
Beautiful, mate. Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. This just goes to show the power of poetry to go through the right brain, to go deeper than the left brain intellect, to the heart. And so much of that, even coming out of that grieving experience, people say, well, she's in denial, or toxic positivity. We hear that sometimes when you're focused on positive, or that's your default kind of setting. But actually by writing, you can process your emotions, you can understand your thoughts, eliminate assumptions, and then you allow yourself to be with what is, which is reality. And, there's gifts in everything, both the positive and the negative. And when you've gone through something significant in your life, you would never take that experience away. Absolutely. You know what? I think one of my clients has just had that happen. She literally said that she's lost her brother and it's devastating. So I get the sense it wasn't expected. So I literally said, cry. I just said, because I've just texted, I said, besides condolences, I then said, get with your family and cry, which, by the way, is a C that I put in there. The power of crying, the importance of crying in the change, transformation, evolution process, to deny crying. In fact, there's a great saying, the body weeps the tears the eyes does not show.
Yeah, that's
beautiful. The body weeps the tears the eyes does not show. It's going to leak out anyway, so cry. But people are afraid of crying, but it's actually an important part of the transformation ever, because you're literally, we're going to do a whole thing on this. When people are letting go of something, tears are part of it, because it's a paradigm shift. And so often I say, when a footballer is retiring and they're literally there in front of the cameras for the first time, or their teammates, and they're crying. They go, and I've got it. Today's the last day. Right? These are grown men, tough. They run through brick walls. But the thought of having to let that go, it's a paradigm shift. At the same time, when someone's on the Olympic dais and they've won a gold medal and the flag and the anthem, they're kind of, holy shit, I'm now here. I was always someone striving for this. Now I'm actually, it's the same thing. It's the crying of the paradigm shift. But of course, people, they're tears of joy. But of course, when we lose someone, they're tears of sadness. But it's all part of the paradigm shift.
Yeah, that's right. And every time we go through that paradigm shift, ultimately, even if it's the death of another, you're ultimately grieving that version of yourself that you were with them. And so throughout life, we're constantly having these micro moments of self-grief.
Yep.
People look back and they, my childhood, it was this, or they grieve their childhood or that part of themselves. And so even in meditation, you can learn how to take the gift. When I'm missing my brother, what is it that I'm missing, and how do I integrate that into me now as parts of that I can become? So when we miss someone, what are those aspects? Even in breakup, will we miss someone? I miss that person, but what is it specifically that we're missing, and how can I integrate those into my being so I can become more of that? Yeah, because usually we miss it within ourselves.
Yes, of course.
We miss that.
Just like to a certain extent, when we see someone, as I said, people, we're like multifaceted diamonds, and when we get with someone, we're actually connecting. I mean, so you and I are connecting those facets that we like about ourselves in terms of the giving, the caring, the going inside, the being community, optimizing humans and helping other humans optimize. And when we see someone who's either rude or lying or cheating, or it's like, it's the other way. You're not attracted. Yeah. Read another one for me. What else have you got there, Paisley?
Okay. This one again. This was I was away on holiday when I wrote this, and I was just having that moment where there's nothing to do and you sit outside and you look at the sky. I touched the sky today. They told me it was limitless. I opened my eyes and there it was, touching me, infinity unfolding.
Whoa, short. It's almost Japanese haiku, isn't it? Where, you know, where they did those short, sharp. It's so short and sharp, it hits you hard.
Yeah. And to me, that was, again, it was that recognition of, you know, the sky is so big, and it's that part of nature that's so profound, and it's expansive, and it represents that part of ourselves. And it might feel far away, but actually, if you're seeing it, your eyes are touching it. It's right there for you.
Yep.
You're already in that experience. And, you know, we can do this with so much of our nature, so much of the nature around us.
Brilliant. I've found one of mine. Thank you for that. This one I'm going to share with you. I wrote when I was down at university, and this would have been years ago, and a person who, I think one of the professors or someone, just like walked past me as if I didn't exist. And I went, what the hell was that? So I wrote this poem called Acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is as fundamental as to know that I exist, to know that another human cares enough about me to make me feel good, to make me feel valued, to let me know that my contribution is a contribution, to know that I am useful, that I'm helping achieve our collective goals. Acknowledgement is the fertilizer we all need to grow. It enriches and strengthens. It guides us ever so softly, so smoothly to blossom in all our fullness. Without it, we wither. Ever so slowly, we sadly wither, and then we die, never knowing. Acknowledgement is the basis of respect, and respect the basis of love. If the only thing you do today is acknowledge someone, you can be guaranteed, my friend, you have made a difference. I said at the bottom of this, I wrote this poem to help explain how I felt about the importance of praise, thanks, and acknowledgement in families, relationships, teams, and businesses. Without it, we wither. Let's not save up all our praise for their funeral, my friend. Say it now.
That's outstanding.
Thanks, mate. That was 1989, that one. That was,
love that. That's outstanding.
Yeah, so I think I'll put some of those in my book I did a while ago, because I saw Justin Langer put his poems in a book, and I went, because you can see poetry.
Justin Langer's a big meditator.
Who's that? Yeah, I know. No, he's an old friend of mine, actually. This is one I wrote for my school, which they put into the 25th year anniversary, and then I've read it out in front of the school a number of times now. My old high school, Eagle Hawk, which is called The Borough. I get, the old story, I get a little emotional about it, but I said, a note from Leigh, Farnell, a boy from the Borough. I was SRC, Student Representative Council President, and Walker House Captain, winning house that year, of course, 1973. So I wrote this in 1989 as well, around when Grace, I couldn't go to the 25th anniversary because we just had our first child, Grace, who's now like 33, 34. 1989, is it 33? Yeah. Mm. The memories are a bit foggy now as we think back to the days of the Borough, of hot summer days in the art room, of wet winter days in the portables, of rugged ball, which was a weird game we played where we bashed the crap out of each other at lunchtime playing on the basketball court, of rugged ball at lunchtime on the hard basketball courts, of long cross-country runs where houses now stand, of Rod Ashman, who was a superstar, kicking another 10 goals from the centre, of Darby Munro dashing down the wing yet again, and Ninger O'Connell and Inky Power and Ginger Hayes and Popeye Phillips and all the other champions from the borough. The mighty two blues on the Eagle, Via Aquila, whatever that means. We never knew what that means. The proud, independent boys from the borough, prefects, house captains, SRC and form captains. Walker wins yet again. Wow, when you have all those champion swimmers and runners and footballers in the one house, mate, what do you expect? Picking up rocks on the new playing fields, the new wing is finally being built. And look at all these new buildings where we once played. Development, the future. The future is now, is work, is marriage, beautiful children, us, living in all parts of this wide brown land. School days are now long since past. No more the bell rings. So I get it. No more the bell rings for us to race to the canteen for milk and cream buns. No more, except when we drift back through the foggy memories, back to the borough. We honour and thank all those heroes from our past, the tolerant and not so tolerant teachers who invested so much of their time and energy into each of us. They taught us how to cook, paint, make totem poles, to run, jump, and in some cases how to play football, to read, write, challenge and accept. To each of you, from each of us, thank you. Thank you wherever you are. You are part of our lives forever. Wherever we are, whatever we do, we all know as we think back, the two blues run thick in our veins. The borough is never too far from our consciousness. The eagle still flies and the totem pole still stands. And from time to time, when our minds drift and wander, we all come together for one final assembly. Everyone is there, headmaster out front. One final assembly back to the borough. So you can imagine. Yeah. So the power of poetry, as you say, to capture. Yeah. Something else happens energetically. You know, they talk about soul singing, heart speak, sharing from the heart, you know.
Yeah. And when you go back to that, it has that impact.
Yeah.
It has that impact. And I don't know about you, but whenever I've written my poetry, whether I'm writing on the past or the present, I've got to be with myself in that moment. I've got to be so one with that experience to kind of to feel what's truly there, to know what I know for sure. You know, and if you're trying to create it and you want it to be some sort of way, you can't do it. No. It's absolute heart speak. And in fact, what happened, I won't read it, this one, but when I found that my father was dying, and by the stage I had 3 kids, and I think let's say it was, what had happened was my father, again, I told you guys, every second member of the family has myotonia dystrophia, but part of muscle wasting and muscular dystrophy, genetic disease. So I thought one of the reasons I did physical education was hoping that if I kept fit, maybe I wouldn't get it. And of course, when we all finally had genetic testing, and the neurologist said, mate, it's genetic. If you've got it, you got it. You know, you can be running marathons one day and eventually you'll decline. So by luck, by just complete roll of the dice, genetic roll of the dice, I don't have it, but my brother, my father, every second member of the family has it. So my father was deteriorating. So I grew up seeing a person deteriorate, never be able to live, you know. Luckily, you know, my mother and he loved each other, so they were a great role model, but essentially he was a pensioner. Money was always a problem. You know, money doesn't grow on trees. You know, he was working class. He was a motor mechanic. He loved fixing cars. So he always said, I'm never going into one of those old people's homes. And so when he was falling more and more, they put him into some kind of place, and eventually there had to be a meeting to go, can he come home or not? And literally, I think it was the Thursday or the Friday, the meeting happened and said, Max, you can't go home. Shirley can't pick you up. It's too much for her. We're going to have to put you into this place. Well, literally his system started to shut down within 24 hours.
I got the phone call. I said, okay, I've got to get on the plane and go over. And they said, mate, by the time you get over here, he'll be gone. So, and Kath said, Leigh, I've got 3 kids. How do I bring 3 kids across to the funeral? Can you just wait? And so then he hung on. And,
wow.
and it got to the Tuesday. So there I'm swimming each morning in the morning, crying in the ocean. I actually had to run a workshop. I think it was like the Monday, and I'm trying to run a workshop with these people, and knowing that my father is dying over in Bendigo, Central Victoria, and eventually the nurse said to my mother, he seems to be hanging on. What's he waiting for?
He's waiting for us. Yeah.
He's waiting for Leigh to come home,
Right.
And she said, she went to him and said, Max, Leigh's got 3 kids. He's not coming home. He'll come to the funeral. And literally within 2 hours, he was gone. So when I heard that, I literally wrote, when I first heard, I just wrote a poem about my dad, which just came out like, where does this stuff come from? Which I then read at the funeral, you just go, where does this stuff come from? I know Keith Richards talks about, I'm just a vehicle, it goes incoming and the song comes out, and Elton John's often said the same. It's like, I don't know where it comes from. It's just like it comes from somewhere, Many times people talk about, I'm just a vehicle for this stuff. But that in those highly emotional states, those words, it's like, it's certainly not a logical left brain conscious exercise. It's coming, but it's also part of that emoting, getting it out, not letting it sit there process. So again, coming back to the role of creativity, the role of writing in that cleansing, which it's another word. So your thoughts on what I've just said, because I yabber away. This is such a deep conversation we're having around mental health, mental well-being.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's always, when I hear your personal experience, like you kind of mentioned with your friend who sings the songs of the soul, I can instantly connect with you, and it hits a part of me that has this understanding. And what we're creating through this honest conversation is depth and intimacy, and the intimacy that we can feel with when we share like this with each other, we also feel inside. And it allows us to be real, raw, and this feeling of being grounded. I don't know about you, but whenever I hear something of truth, I always almost get this, it's like someone's pouring water through me. I get this sort of this feeling of lightness, and it's the same feeling I felt even with my brother's passing, this feeling of lightness, and like even in your own personal experience, that connection to your father, we don't have to be facing each other to have that connection. It exists amongst all things.
Yes. Paisley, what I'm going to do, just as I finish off, years ago, we went to America in the 80s, and that's the first time we heard the word wellness. And over that time, the wealth athlete, we did a lot of work around wellness and wealth. And I ended up writing this poem on the 5 worlds of the wealth athlete. But the world I want to talk about and just finish off with, because I talk about the wealth athlete lives in many of the physical world, the financial world, the mental world, the emotional world, the social world, the people they hang out with. But the one I want to talk about and just wrap up with here is the spiritual world. And it's, to a certain extent, that's what we've been talking about, the spiritual world, which at the time, I didn't even know what I was talking about really, but some part of me did. But we're talking about, you talked about the word seeker. And I only found out recently that the third eye, as these 2 eyes are looking at the external world and the physical world, the third eye is going to the internal world, what's going on inside us. And so somehow we're talking today about, if we're talking about mental health and well-being, we're talking about the world inside us. And we often think about the world inside us as just between our ears, but in fact, it's way more than just between the ears. And then we're talking about energy. So let me just write this one, and I'll get your comment or thoughts or feeling at the end of it. The spiritual world, the world that brings and I get the feeling today, by the way, that we're the world that brings the wealth athletes together. I consider you a wealth athlete, as in a holistic coach of wealth athletes, but of course living by example as well. But the world that brings the wealth athlete to be who they are is the world of the enchanted, the world of the unseen, the world of faith, love, inspiration, inner power, purpose, commitment, values, and connection with the power of the universe. The wealth athlete understands the awesomeness and the gentility of the world greater than man. He understands the deep, powerful connection between all that is seen and is unseen. It is the space between touchable and untouchable that he derives his true strength, a strength that comes from stillness, reflection, inner celebration, and thankfulness for just being. The wealth athlete is a spiritual being, a being with a purpose, a strong sense of spirit in a universal community, on a never-ending path to understanding and personal fulfillment, yet at the same time, content and blissfully happy in the moment. The wealth athlete is a living paradox, yet within this paradox is a happy, contented being. The wealth athlete lives in many worlds at the same time. He actively cares for, exercises, and nourishes each of these worlds with the same discipline and love. He invests his time in wealth creation activities so that his rituals, patterns, and habits involve all of these worlds regularly. For the wealth athlete, winning is being, winning is giving, winning is loving, winning is contributing to the global community. Welcome to the world's wealth athlete. And I really consider you a wealth athlete, Paisley.
I love hearing that. That's just cool. You know, that is, to me, that wraps up everything that I think when we're searching for meaning that we're truly looking for.
Yeah. Paisley, what a conversation we've had. Talk about constructive conversation, and we haven't even had coffee. In fact, what I've done,
even had coffee.
We haven't even had coffee. Well, what I'm drinking out of,
maybe that's why we've really gone straight into
maybe.
You know?
Well, talk about chance connections. This is a cup from Oscar's in New York, in Greenwich Village. I said to Kath and I, we were walking, we did that Green Mile walk in New York, wanted to go down to Greenwich Village because I just know that's where the artistic centre of New York is, and just hang out. So let's just say, when we'd been overseas for about 4 or 5 weeks playing water polo in Canada and New York, or, you know, America, and this guy comes out and goes, "What can I get you, Gov?" I went, "Oh my God, it's an Englishman in New York." I said, "What, you bloody what sting?" And of course, it's a completely different sense of humour, the Australian and English sense of humour compared to, and with the connection that I had with, this guy, Neil from Oscar's, the name of his son, was just, we've stayed in touch on Facebook. I've been back 2 or 3 times, and there's just this connection, even though it's like an international community, with this guy. And then in there is Lemon, one of the guys that I'm about to go to a meeting with. They said, "Do you want a cup of tea?" I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, do you want lemon?" I went, "What?" He goes, "Put some." They've got a lemon tree. He's got me onto just lemon in hot water, and I'm using that Manuka honey with it as well. Going, what a great bloody drink. It's changed. Yeah. So all from chance connections. And Paisley, this constructive conversation we've had this morning is from a chance connection, and we're going to continue to co-collaborate and co-create and continue to have an impact together. And I really want to thank you. We're talking about everyday empowerment. If people don't get something out of this in terms of all of the C's that we've covered, calmness, confusion, and challenge, and co-creation, choice, core, community, goes on and on. Thank you so much for your time, Paisley. Anything you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, just thank you for creating the space for this to happen, and also valuing it so much that you've integrated it into your life, and you've made space for us to have these discussions and film and share. And, it's one thing to have a conversation, it's another to actually create. So I'm in awe. I think that's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Well, people can get hold of you via your website, which is what?
PaisleyMadison.au.
PaisleyMadison.au. Oh, you've used the new thing that's happening.
That's right. I'm glad you noticed.
I got to get up. I got to get up with that.
You can't get any. It's nice. It's clean. It's Australian.
Exactly, mate. Good on you.
Yeah.
True blue. I like it. Paisley, thank you so much. People get hold of Paisley, and I'll put a picture of your website up there as well. And Paisley, I look forward to seeing you down the beach and staying in touch. And let's see what other magic we can create as wealth athletes as we go forward.
Beautiful. Sounds good. I'll see you at the beach.
Thanks, mate. All the best. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.